Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Roundtable. It's me, Tina. I'm going to be hosting tonight's show with Delilah. Unfortunately, this is going to be a little bit of a mini ladies takeover tonight because it's just the two of us girls. So this should be interesting, and good to see you, Delilah. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be home. It's been like a gloomy day in Chicago. I prefer the snow to the rain. You know, if I gotta deal, not like crazy snow. I mean, if I gotta deal with December 5th, I'd rather have a nice little half an inch of snow than like cold rain, dampness.
Yeah. Like rain that can turn to snow at any point, and you're just waiting for that 5-degree drop, and it's like, yep, ice tomorrow morning. So, yep, lovely here in Illinois. Gotta love the Chicago, Northern Illinois weather here. So, all right, well, why don't we head into it? And as always, like Nick does, we're gonna start off with the coin toss. Okay. So, I think one of the first things we're going to discuss today is a couple of QBs that have been making a pretty good name for themselves to be possible MVPs. So, Delilah, we're going to start with you. You probably, um, Brock Purdy. You think he should be in the MVP conversation?
I mean, yes, at least in the conversation. He should be in the conversation. I think that what needs to happen is, I think we need to stop saying it's a test run. He was, you know what I mean? I think that is the part we should drop. I think he's proven himself to be the quarterback that San Francisco needs, you know? So he balled out, you know, like it was crazy. I think, you know, I was, uh, it gave me 34 fantasy points. That's how good he was. So he should be at least in the conversation for sure. But I think that we need to start saying, "Oh, he needs to prove himself." That's the part that I think needs to end now. I think the man has proven himself more than enough. He should be in a conversation, but I don't know if he's really up there in the, you know, in the MVP race. Though I haven't. I see kind of the same few people, but I haven't seen. He should be in a conversation though, at least, because he's carrying the San Francisco team.
Well, I think he should be up there with the ones that are being talked about, like the best in the league, because, I mean, yeah, it's only his second year in the league, but he's done a lot when he's been in there in San Francisco. And yes, some of that has to do with his head coach, Shanahan, understanding conversations you have talked about before. When you have a young quarterback, you need a good coach. You need somebody that's going to take his strengths and make them work. Now, let's also be clear here too. He's getting a lot of help. Having Christian McCaffrey, having Debo, having a Yook, that
Yes.
is definitely going to help you a lot with what you're doing. But I don't think just having those guys takes him out of the MVP conversation, especially if San Francisco keeps playing as well as they did. I mean, they took the Eagles to town. They ruffled those feathers quite a bit on that game.
Oh yeah.
So that was a beat down.
That was good. That was kind of a rematch to me. I feel like
Oh,
last year was
100%.
last year was unfair because Purdy went down with that injury. So who would have known what that Super Bowl would have looked like, right?
Mhm.
You know,
I
if Purdy
agree.
hadn't left that game. So I feel like this was a rematch. This was the 49ers proving that they were the ones that should have won the NFC championship and gone to the Super Bowl.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was a rematch of the NFC championship game last year, and he's quarterbacks are gonna have their ups and their downs. It's just the way it's gonna be. I mean, Jalen Hurts didn't look wonderful in that game, so, I mean, yeah, I agree. He should at least be in the conversation,
Mhm.
and if the 49ers make the run, then he has to be in that
Oh
conversation
yeah, for sure.
because he's done a lot of stuff this year that have turned those numbers around. All right. Second one kind of hurts me in my heart, but I think he also should be in the conversation. And you know who I'm referring to, right, Delilah?
I think so.
Mr. CJ Stroud.
Yes. For a rookie, it's been a while since we've seen a rookie come into the league ready. You know what I mean? Like just with the natural talent to
Mhm.
just look at that NFL scheme, and how the NFL is different from college and just adapt so quickly and so naturally. Like, kudos to the Texans and seeing something in him and going, you know what, that's our guy. And the Texans have been through a lot. We know that, right? Like, they're
Yeah.
trying to throw off a shadow that they had for a few seasons. And they're finally making good decisions, I think, in coaching, I think in players. I think now you'll have those players that wanted to leave, right? Some of the best were like, why am I here? Now you'll have that retention because they're like, okay, you got me good leadership, you got me a good coach, and you got me a young, talented quarterback that can can really show up
Mhm.
and win games. And that kid's been balling out. And I think that's really hard to see. Um, he should be in that MVP conversation. I just think as a rookie, he probably won't be given that. I could see him getting that offensive rookie of the year, like for sure. I just don't know
Mhm.
if a rookie QB the MVP, but he should definitely be in that conversation. He's earned it to me, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's probably gonna get offensive rookie of the year, at least on the AFC side. And I think that conversation will also depend on how they do the rest of this season
Yeah.
and how they do in the playoffs. Their defense is really good. I mean, they've got a tremendous pass rush. Like on my side of the thing on Twitter and everything else, everybody's talking about how bad Russell was, but nobody's acknowledging how good
Hmm.
that defense is and what their
Yeah.
pass rush can do. So that's a conversation. I think though if they keep going along and they move up in the playoffs and they play well, then the conversation really does need to start up about what CJ Stroud had done.
Yeah.
And that's just the way those things kind
I
of
know.
roll on
They
that
really
side.
do.
So, I mean, the better you're doing, the better you are. And but let's also be honest too, like a lot of these defenses have not played against CJ Stroud yet.
True. Very true.
So they're not knowing, but you can I mean, as that game kind of showed me a little bit, he could be a bit of a hothead. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. I'm not saying he didn't have a right to react the way that he did to what was going on. I'm just saying that he's got some fire in him and he's you never know what might happen and everything. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah, I kind of agree. He's he should be in the conversation. I mean, in my opinion, and it's just with a couple of years, I think these guys are probably, and I'm going to get nailed for this with some people. I think they might be better than Josh Allen and some of those other guys that are
I
put up.
mean, no, I don't think so. I think if CJ keeps playing the way if
Hmm.
CJ is showing that level, remember, we don't, it's very rare for, rookie quarterbacks, regardless of when they're picked in the first or second round, to naturally adapt that quickly. They have done it, but we don't see it a lot. You really don't. And so,
Yeah.
kudos to that kid. I think Houston is gonna create some trouble in the AFC. I agree with you. Hi Anthony from the road. I know you're driving home from work. Drive safely.
Hey, buddy. Yeah, and I also think what's helping CJ too, and it's something we talked about with Brock Purdy too, which is I think D'Amico Ryan is a very good fit with him, and
Hmm.
D'Amico has the right person coaching him and teaching, bringing him along and teaching him how to handle what's going on and all of that. So
Absolutely.
that yeah, so I mean, D'Amico might have been a defensive coordinator for us last year, but I think Houston might have their head coach, but
Yep.
we'll see what happens with this year and subsequent years too. So, all right. Well, how about we go in and talk about the craziness that is known as the wild card slash in the hunt teams for the playoffs. And specifically, let's start with the number 7 team on the NFC side, which is the Packers. And is Jordan Love as bad as what people thought he was earlier this year?
I don't think
Yep.
so. I don't think so. I am a Bears fan. Everyone knows. However, I'm always really careful, and as people know, I try to be very objective. And I've always said I don't think that people were giving Jordan Love enough space and room. Like people were just already like, he's awful, and he's gonna look how he's playing. And I'm like, relax. It's his first official season. He's not a rookie, but this is when he's actually in charge of the team. This is him leading. This is him a quarterback. He's got to work out those kinks. We know, they've got a good coach. And so, you know what I mean? And they know how to develop players, and they actually take time to do that and mentor. And so I do think that the people were really harsh on him in the beginning. And I said, relax. You got to just let him work out the kinks. Green Bay is good at that. They're very good. That's what they do. They're very good at developing quarterbacks. That's quarterback university for a reason. So, like, that's I was like, give it a while. He's still learning the system officially. He's Aaron Rodgers is gone. He picked up the mantle. And very quickly, if you know Green Bay fans, they fell right behind Jordan Love. Okay. That's how you support your team.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they like seeing that he's been winning. And believe me, because I spent a lot of time in a Green Bay Packer bar, because my significant other DJs at my buddies, which is a Green Bay Packer bar in Chicago, they're ecstatic that they're seventh right now. Okay, they're
Oh, yeah.
ecstatic, and of course, they see themselves going all the way. That's a other conversation. But hey, it's exciting though. It's exciting football. It makes for what's going to happen. Really, we got still a few more weeks, but it's some good football to keep an eye on to see who really ends up in that seventh. But right now, it is Green Bay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but this is a stat um, that a lot of people don't know is Jordan Love's record right now is the same as what Aaron Rodgers was his first year that he played. So, I mean, if you think Aaron Rodgers was all that great, I mean, Jordan's right there too. So, I mean, that's the thing everybody forgets. They're like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, he's played for 2 years. Oh, how many years was he there?" It's like, "Yeah, but he wasn't on the field every
No,
day, every Sunday. He
exactly.
wasn't playing snaps with the first team,
Mm-hmm.
etc., and all that stuff." So, yeah, I mean, it's just kind of craziness. I think he's earned his right to stay there. He's earned the right for another year, if not more, depending on how he does. I mean, beating the Chiefs is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not like, yeah, they're not the powerhouse that they were or that they've been in the past couple of years where they're just able to win anything and everything. And I swear Kermit touches it and it turns to green gold, but they're still good. They're a good team. And for their, and I know some people had some problems with some of the officiating in the game, but as we all know, that stuff happens everywhere.
Yes, it
So
does.
you got to overcome it and you got to win the game. So, all right. So let's see. So it's Eagles are in first, 49ers second, Lions, and then Falcons. And then we have the Cowboys in fifth place, Vikings and Packers. So in the hunt of the Rams, Seattle, Tampa, and the Saints, who do you think might have a chance at maybe possibly if things go their way mathematically, could possibly make it in the playoffs and may be able to maybe do a decent run?
I mean, it really depends on who, what the rest of the season looks like for some of these teams. I mean, we know that it's similar, but not exactly to last year, where it was Green Bay again and Seattle. They were both in the hunt last year, and we all know how that ended up. And so, you know, out of the four, if anyone would take 7 from Green Bay, I think it would be Seattle. Just based
Okay.
on just the well-roundedness of the team. I just don't think, even though I know Rams are 8th, I just don't think they're the Rams that we're used to. Like I know,
No,
I just don't see.
losing Puka,
Yeah, yeah.
losing Puka
So
hurt him really bad. So
yeah,
yeah,
so
I kind of agree with you. Yeah,
that's kind of the only team I could see. I could see Green Bay staying where they are, honestly, and go in with that 7th seed. I wouldn't be surprised. They've done it before. But if someone is going to knock them out of 7, I would say Seattle. Out of those
yeah.
4 that are in the hunt.
Right, and kind of leading back into the thing that you just popped up, going back to the conversation between Aaron and Jordan. Yeah, their stats are almost exactly the same too. So I I think that goes forward with the thing with you've got you right now have you guys the Packers have their replacement quarterback for right now until he proves otherwise. So, all right, well, let's talk about the Dante's Inferno, known as the latter part of the AFC wild card slash hunt. Because, Lord, every week this is going to change. I
It
swear,
is.
just based
It
on
is.
who's playing
Sure.
blue.
For sure.
Okay, so Dolphins are number one. So, everybody, Dolphins are finally up there.
All
We
right.
have the Ravens
Congratulations,
into
Bobby.
Ravens are number two. Chiefs are in third, and Jacksonville is in fourth. And yeah, we will have a little conversation about that game last night. Fifth is the Steelers, sixth is the Colts, and the Browns are in seventh. And the fifth, sixth, and seventh teams all have a 7-5 record, I
Yeah.
believe. So
Yeah.
literally one loss, that thing's going to switch around like nobody's business. And then in the hunt is Houston, then my team, and then the Bills. And so if any of us would get up there, so like Houston wins the tiebreaker against us. We win the tiebreaker against the Bills. We win the tiebreaker against the Browns. This team has the tiebreaker against the Steelers. So it's just going to get that thing's going to change because
It
it's
is.
all in there. So um okay, so I mean, I hope my guys can do it. They got to do a 4-1 run to be able to do it. They can only lose one more game. And so we'll see with the rest of them. I have to be honest, I don't think the Browns are going to be able to pull it out. They're just limping along.
Mm-hmm.
And Colts, I mean, Gardner's being Gardner. Somehow, no, everybody's like, "Oh, he's horrible," and then he does something, and they're doing well.
Yeah, they
So,
are. They are.
like,
I don't know. I think I
yeah,
could
they
see
lost
Houston.
the rookie.
I could see
Yeah.
Houston sneaking in there. I could see Houston
Oh,
if I know they got an injury they're worried about, but if they're the team we think they are, right? We're seeing
mhm,
them come to life. We're seeing
yep,
I don't know D'Amico's as you do, but if I'm saying so, like, if we're seeing the coach of their future so far, and we're seeing the
Mhm.
talent of CJ and their defense, as we've said, is up there, top 5, I think you said, Tina. So
Mhm.
I could see them sneaking in there and taking that 7th spot and going to the playoffs. Remember, they have one less week than the NFC because it switched, ever since the
Mhm.
NFL implemented the additional week. That doesn't go to the AFC this time.
Yep, it
So
goes to
they
the
have,
NFC then.
yeah, so they have less time to actually, get in there. But I could see Houston sneaking in or taking that away from the Browns.
Oh, I think they will definitely move up. They will be in one of the wild card positions. The other teams, it's gonna depend on how they play and who they're playing,
Mm.
and the Steelers and Colts have a couple of big teams in there and a couple of ones that I think will be close, so, yeah, yeah, it's a whole mess,
Yes,
like,
it is.
I literally feel
Yes.
like pickup sticks. Remember the pickup sticks game where you just pick them up and throw
Yes.
them, and where it lands is what happens? I
100%.
honestly think that's kinda how
Yes,
the AFC wildcard slash in the hunt is
I
right now.
agree.
So
I agree.
all right. Well, Handy kind of mentioned this in our little chat that we have for our show, and I think we should talk about it, is how many QBs got injured this week?
Yeah.
Like Trevor's out. Well, he'll probably be back, but he got injured. Dollar General Jesus. Oh, I always forget his name every time I see him on TV. He was the guy that played for Tampa. He
Yeah.
was the backup guy.
Yes, he
The
was.
Fitzgerald. I mean, Minshew and Fitzgerald are kinda out of the same mold. Like, they're fun. It's just the way they are. So, let's see, good lord, I am drawing a blank. Besides, well, Trevor Lawrence got injured. Um, who else got injured this week?
I
I
mean,
should have
I think
looked this
in
up.
general, right? I think that's what he
Oh,
means to say. Like in general, it's been
yeah.
like a slew of quarterback injuries. With Lawrence, though, from what I have read, it's not like what we've seen where they've been out for a season, right? Like season ending.
Yeah.
So like they're thinking his prognosis is going to be more positive than everyone's
Yeah.
else's. But yeah, 100% been a lot of QB injuries. I think just player injuries in general. Honestly, like people, we saw Dell from the wide receiver from Houston is injured. He's
Mhm.
out for the season with his ankle injury. So,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
so it's not
Yeah.
just QBs.
Oh, no. We're seeing them, and this is the time when the players are starting to get
Hmm.
tired. It's been a long draw, long season, things that have been lingering, just one foot wrong in the right way, and pop, you're gone. Or even getting hit, because or being in the piles, like, because bodies are piling on top of bodies. So you just never know how things are gonna happen, but I do have to say Houston covered with Dell being out. Yeah, he was their number 1 producer, and he was the one that was scoring a lot of stuff, but they had a couple of backups that came in, and they might be they're not tank in any way, shape, or form, but that defense is extremely stingy and opportunistic. So, um, all CJ has to do is just score them high enough to be able to beat the people they're playing. So, we'll see. Yeah. God, that was it.
And that's
Oh,
about
such
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's just kind of the way that it goes. So, all right. Well, I think we will be taking a break from the round table, and we're going to go into Delilah's section on this week in the NFL. Uh,
All right. Hey, everybody. Just making sure I'm unmuted. It's leftover paranoia from, locked up with COVID and doing everything over Zoom. Working over Zoom. So I always have to make sure All right, so here we go. Let's dive right in. There wasn't too much going on December 1st of this week in the NFL, so I just moved on to this December 2nd. All right, so December 2nd, 1893 is allegedly, people are saying, is the first time a leather helmet was used in a game, right, in football. The version in question was created by an Annapolis, Maryland shoemaker from moleskin straps. The first game that this masterpiece was used for was worn by Admiral Joseph Mason Reed in the annual Army versus Navy game. I love that this game has gone back to like the 1800s, which is bananas, but also really cool. The Smithsonian Magazine says that he, and this is the player, Joseph Mason Reed, had apparently been kicked and hit in the head so many times. Remember, it's 1893. His doctor told him that another heart impact could lead to him being instantly brain dead. And this is 1893. So if a doctor in 1893 is telling you, like, dude, you got hit in the head too many times, right? Like, I would take them seriously. So, but he wanted to play in the big game. So he went to his shoemaker and had his shoemaker make him a leather helmet made from moleskin with ear flaps, all so that he can play football in the annual Army versus Navy game. So there you have it. That's when they're saying the first leather helmet was worn and why. December 2nd, 1951, Griffith Stadium in Washington, D.C., the Philly Eagles set an NFL record of rushing for 25 first downs as they powered their way to a 35-21 win. I don't want to say which team it was. It should be obvious if they played in Griffith Stadium in Washington, D.C. Also on December 2nd, 1951, the Green Bay Packers, they had their that's the very first time that the Packers retired in their history at that time, their franchise, they retired a jersey number. The jersey that was retired was number 14, which was worn by wide receiver Don Hudson. I'm sure Green Bay fans out there can tell me a lot about Don Hudson, but that is the first jersey that they retired. It was his. All right, December 2nd, 1984, Mr. Dan Marino broke the NFL single season touchdown pass record when he threw his 37th scoring strike. Dan the Man finished the 1984 season with a record 48 touchdown passes thrown. Also, December 2nd, 1985, so a year later, what people consider the Orange Bowl in Miami, Chicago Bears head coach Mike Ditka and their defensive coordinator Buddy Ryan almost came to blows during halftime in their locker room because this is the game that the Bears only lost during that Super Bowl run was to Miami. And Ditka and the defensive coordinator Buddy Ryan basically almost got in a fight. Apparently, they were known for being basically hating each other. This was again before my time. This was 85. I just know the stories. They actually hated each other, which I think is interesting since they managed to take this team to the Super Bowl, even though they couldn't stand each other. So, and so that's what happened on December 2nd, 1985. They almost got in a fisticuffs fight in the locker room during halftime when the Bears suffered their only loss of the season, 38-24 against Miami Dolphins. All right, moving on to December 3rd. December 3rd, 1944 was during World War II. If you didn't know. Wartime left the NFL player inventory extremely sparse because everybody was basically going overseas, right, to fight in World War II. And so they tried to do a lot of different things to try to survive the NFL, that is. So in 1944, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Chicago Cardinals chose to try a temporary merger of the two NFL teams with an agreement that it will dissolve at the end of that season. They are forever remembered as the Card Pits. Once World War II ends before 1945 season, so both teams were able to resume normal operations, which I thought was really interesting because it's not the first time. The Steelers did this again. Actually, I'll talk about that a little later in your next stat because they actually did that twice. So they did it first with the Chicago Cardinals. They also did that with Philly. Yeah, exactly. Again, during wartime, Philly and Pittsburgh agreed to play a season together. This happened December 5th, 1943. I know I jumped ahead, but I felt like both things were kind of connected, so I wanted to say them in tandem. But yeah, December 5th, 1943, the merger of the Philly Eagles and Pittsburgh Steelers in the NFL, referred to by many as the Steagles. They, of course, dissolved as that season came to an end. But again, they did it so that those two teams could survive. So Pittsburgh merged with two different teams during the last couple of years of World War II in order to help those two teams survive. I don't know if we'll ever see something like that again. Like, God forbid, I hope we don't go to war. But you know what I mean? I don't know if we'll see teams agree to come together so that those teams don't dissolve and the NFL could survive. But yeah, that was kind of interesting. I wanted to talk about that. December 3rd, 1950, so I'm kind of flipping back. The Cleveland Browns were the last NFL team to play a game in which no passes were thrown. Okay, I've talked about a few of these, but this is the last time that actually happened. So again, December 3rd, 1950, the Cleveland Browns were the last NFL team to play a game in which they did not throw a single pass. If you want to read more about this, the Inquirer apparently has a really good article. Basically, they're saying the reason this happened was a combination of less than perfect weather, material. So a lot of this stuff happened. And so some discipline style football by Cleveland where they all did their job. They still won, though. The Browns defeated the two-time champions at that time, Philly Eagles, 13-7. We had a lot of those games on Sunday, actually, those really one-score games. But that's how that. So yeah, so that was the last time that happened. All right, moving on to December 4th. December 4th, 1909. This is for my Canadian friends that watch this. This is the first ever Grey Cup. So December 4th, 1909, in Rosedale Field, Toronto, the first ever Grey Cup game took place between the University of Toronto Blues, who beat the Toronto Parkdale Canoe Club 26-6. And so there you have it. The first Grey Cup happened December 4th, 1909. All right, December 4th, 1932. A game happened. What I liked about this is that December 4th, 1932, there was an NFL team that we know as the Detroit Lions. But in 1932, they were not the Detroit Lions. They actually played in Portsmouth, Ohio, and they were known as the Portsmouth Spartans. And so right now, that stadium is still there. It's like a museum, basically. It's called Spartan Municipal Stadium, and it holds nearly a century of football history. It was known as LeBold Field, and again, it was home to who is now the Detroit Lions in Detroit, but they were known as the Portsmouth Spartans. The reason I'm mentioning a little background into them in December 4th, 1932 is because the Portsmouth Spartans had an incredible victory over the Green Bay Packers. That game is known as the Iron Man game. Coach Patsy Clark of the Portsmouth Spartans played the same 11 men that whole game, offense, defense. He didn't substitute any players. And they defeated the Green Bay Packers 19-0, which is why it's known as the Iron Man game, because this small team from a tiny little town in Ohio beat the defending champions Green Bay Packers 19-0 and prevented them from moving on to the championship games that year. So it was like a big deal. It was so huge that it drew a crowd of 13,000 people for a stadium that held 7,000. So what happened is that they had to call in the National Guard to do crowd control. And so that's the Iron Man game of December 4th, 1932, between the Portsmouth, Ohio Spartans, which are now the Detroit Lions. So yeah, long-standing rivalry there. But that's kind of what happened. So again, just some like quick little tidbits there. And then December 5th, 1974, I'm sorry, Tina, but this is when the Seattle Seahawks franchise was officially announced. Pete Rozelle gave the go-ahead to a consortium called the Seattle Professional Football, and that group, headed up by Lloyd Nordstrom, cut a check for a cool $16 million to make NFL football in Seattle reality. And I know $60 million to buy a team is like they would laugh at you today. But at the time, it bought you a football team and it got you the Seattle Seahawks. So there you go. December 5th, 1974 was the birth of the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, this day or this week in NFL history.
Yeah, I didn't know about them merging teams together. So that's interesting. Like how they were able to get themselves through the war years as far as football was concerned. Kind of like baseball bringing in women to play, all of that. So that's pretty cool. All right. Well, we had a couple of Sam Howell in the league QB? Well, I know what Nick's answer would be. um, I would he's not quite elite. I think he shows potential. I think he needs a better cast of characters around him in terms and second round for Hal, no. We need those picks. We need those picks so badly because the next question about when can we get out of Wilson's contract? Not until after 2024. So 20 the after the 2024 season is when we could possibly that's when his incentives and everything on his extension go down. So and even then we'd still take a hit on the cap. So as much as some people in my fan base would like for him to be traded or to just move on, it's not going to happen. You know, there's just too much money tied up in him. So, all right. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break and then we'll come back and I will go on into my favorite section, the corner office. Hey everyone, it's Tina, and welcome to the Mile High Minute.
Probably the best part of it. Well, man, I'm the field. Oh, I thought it was the ugly, but I'm bad.
You're the bad.
Oh, okay, kicking game.
You're ugly.
I'm talking about the ugly. And you know what's ugly? I'll tell you what's ugly. It's calls for Vance Joseph being fired. John Payne put together a solid game plan. 2 weeks in a row. This is a big. But overall, I can't complain too much. We just need to be the Bills. This defense performed at an exceptional level against very good teams.
This was our third win in a row. Very happy. I'm just concerned about.
And also to give a little plug to my little show, a Mile High Minute that we've been doing. We do have some comments and some thoughts on the game that we put together, but there was a little bit of some technical difficulties. So we're redoing them. It'll be up tomorrow once we get it put together. Me and the guys, a couple of the guys you see up there are going to do a little Zoom call and redo it.
Oh, it's okay. I love it though. Hey,
Um,
Anthony, I covered both those guys you mentioned. You're my diversity with Delilah episodes. I did cover Fritz Kohler. Do you know that? Because you liked when I did that. And I also covered art.
so, yep.
I covered
Yeah.
both. All right. I can't wait
Okay.
to see the new stuff, Tina. It's good stuff.
Yeah, those are the guys I pal around with every week at the bar
Yeah.
that when we're watching the game. So
Ooh, all
we
right.
we have a good camaraderie and we go to games and stuff like that together. So
Nice.
we've known each other for a while. So
All
all
right.
right, well, let's open the door to the corner office. Okay, so we're going to go back to the normal on the corner office. I'm going to start out with the top 3 corners in the NFL right now. And in number 1, and probably more than likely no one's going to overtake him, is Mr. Bland from the Cowboys. He now has 8 interceptions and he leads the league by quite a bit. Coming in at number 2 is Adebo from the Saints. He's also been on this list and he has 4 interceptions as of this week. And then coming in, I think he's new, but I don't keep all my notes, is Taylor Britt from the Bengals. He is now number 4. So those are the top corners of the week, and I'm sure Bland's gonna blast past that current record that he is tied for at this time. So he's gonna be the top corner at some point. He's got the record, and I have to be honest, even though I'm not a Cowboys fan, I do really like his. I like what he's doing there. So, all right. Well, this one, Delilah, why don't you and I both kind of talk about this? Because if you watch the 49ers and Eagles game, we know all about this. I'm going to call it the Dom dilemma. And that was my nickname for him. As everybody knows, Greenlaw, who played for the 49ers, essentially tried a wrestling move and body slammed to Devonta onto the ground and earned himself a flag and a personal foul. I mean, there's no other word for it. That's what it was. And then Dom DeBianco, which if you don't know who he is a I had it on another piece of paper. I'd wrote down his actual title. He's like the assistant to the general manager and the chief of security officer for the Eagles. And he's been on the sidelines. A lot of people have talked about him. People in the Phillies love him. Well, he was not happy with that what Greenlaw did. And so he shoved Greenlaw off of Devonta. Well, as we all know, what ended up happening is Greenlaw got a penalty, personal foul, unsportsmanlike conduct, 15-yard penalty. And then DiBianco, after that was done, there was a pause for a little bit, and then DiBianco was told by the officials on the field and escorted off the field and told that he needed to leave and that he was also being disqualified along with Greenlaw. And so there's been a lot of talk about this one, and I kind of wanted to just go into this one a little bit because they were saying like a lot of the stuff that was coming out was like, how can the NFL do that, et cetera, et cetera? Like he's not a player, he can, et cetera. But here's the thing: is that as always, there is a rule in the NFL. Under the rules for the NFL, under Article 2, Rule 13, it's called non-player conduct. And that's also in the section that they talk about all the fouls. And I talked about personal fouls last week. And what that says in there is, and I'm pulling it up so I can say it correctly, there shall be no unsportsmanlike conduct by a substitute, coach, attendant, or any other non-player entitled to sit on a team's bench during any period or timeout, including between halves. So, I think you probably have also read, like, the NFL is looking into this. They're looking at all of this. This is also another example of what I mentioned last week, which is if you have a penalty and there's a review of that penalty, anything that happened after that penalty happened and going forward is subject to review by the NFL, and the refs can, and also the Iron Sky and New York can look at that. So ultimately, Dom, there's no flag to throw for non-player conduct. They could have penalized the Eagles 15 yards, which in that case it would have just offsetted violations. I don't know why they didn't. I'm sure the NFL will explain why they didn't get a flag for that. But it also says in there that the refs can decide to disqualify that non-player person. So, all that being said, Delilah, do you think it was the right call to disqualify him, or do you think he shouldn't have been disqualified?
Yeah, I mean, yes, because I don't care what team it is. You can't just go in and start like ripping people off. You know what I mean? Like regardless of like what you thought happened, you're not a coach, you're not a player, you're not even the water boy, right? and you're running and you're just yanking grown men. You know what I'm saying? Like yeah, no, he should have gotten ejected. Now, what's crazy about that is that now we gotta start looking like weird rules of like what happens with a person pushes her, and it's like that's why you gotta go in and look at this minutia of why because someone decided that they were gonna go a little above what they're were hired to do. It's just like
I mean, I think his emotions were high. He was trying to defend his player, which is what his which I get that because he's a member of the Eagles, but that's not his job on the field.
no,
His job on the field is to make sure that people who shouldn't be on the field don't get on the field.
right?
It's not to protect a player while they're sitting there playing. If another player had done that, that player would have gotten a foul
Oh yeah,
and
for
would have
sure.
been ejected.
Yes,
So if another player on that team can't do it, what makes it seem like the security guard can?
not at all. Yeah,
So
they
he
totally.
didn't. I think the reason why he didn't get the penalty was he wasn't really trying
Mhm.
to escalate it. He was trying to de-escalate the situation, but he went around it the wrong way. He should never have stepped in. If anyone should have been stepping in that situation, it should have been the refs, or
Mhm.
two, the head coach
Right.
and pulling it like that. But as we all know, like you said, the head coach can't stop that. The head coach can't pull a player off somebody else. Neither can any of the other coaches. So I understand this guy is kind of like Philly has got these like local guys that end up in the team. They end up being these local heroes and
Right.
everything. But he stepped out of line. He seriously stepped out of line. And who knows what's going to happen with this one. But this is like what I was saying earlier too when we talked about the gambling policy and some of that stuff is just because you're a player in the NFL doesn't mean you're not subject to the same rules.
Yeah.
And maybe the only thing I can think about this is, and in a way, I'm kind of glad they did what they did, which is okay, you can't be out here anymore. We're not going to charge a foul. And from the interviews I've read with Shanahan and other people, like Shanahan was hot. He was really, but he couldn't do anything about it because he's across
Right.
the field. He can't. So he finally was like, "Look, I'll stop. Fine, we'll move on." But he was planning on talking to the NFL anyway. So the league's gonna look at this. I think the reason, because again, because the New York and the Eye in the Sky can look at everything that happens during
Mhm.
that replay, they said, we're gonna eject him. We want this to never happen again.
Right.
And the only thing I will say is because you notice how I said it said people entitled to be on the bench or by the bench. There are rules as to who can be by the bench and how far away from the bench they can be.
Mhm.
Hopefully, this guy wasn't breaking any rules because if he was, it's going to get worse for the Eagles.
Yeah, because I mean,
So
he made it onto the field faster than it's like what?
he
Where?
was standing
It's
right
like,
there. Like, that was my question when I
like
first saw it
what?
happen. I mean, forgetting all the heat and
Right.
everything, and it's in the game, and yes, the Eagles were frustrated and things are going on and
Right.
emotions are high, and you have a bunch of men with high testosterone levels playing a very violent game.
Yeah.
But why was he that close? What was going on that he needed to be that close to that bench? So I got a lot of questions. I was just like, what was he doing down there? Because I
Yeah.
mean, you got security guys, and I
Yeah.
get he needs to tell them go here, there, or wherever to make sure that nobody's jumping over the side or that people aren't getting in where they shouldn't be. But I just have a lot of questions about it, and I think this is going to be a bit of a saga. It's just in
It
my
is.
in my in my gut. I kind of think like,
They're
oh,
gonna
this one,
adjust your they're gonna adjust your rules for you, and then you have to come back in a few weeks going, well, now.
yeah. And if next week, if they issue an opinion in the next week and they talk about why they didn't do what they did, then I'll be like, all right, fine. That's how you. I mean, as we all know, half these rules are subjective.
They
We talked
are,
about it last week, and I
but
do want to go back.
they're not gonna want that to happen again. So
Oh no,
I feel like they are going to, of course, investigate. whether they do
Mhm.
nothing now, but now I know there's going to be some policy in place for that because then they're like, we want to make sure people that are not coaches, that are not players, don't feel like, wait a minute, this dude over here is just, so I can go in there
Mhm.
and defend my players too, because it could become a whole other problem.
Right.
So I do think
Yeah.
now we probably, maybe not this season, because usually we see new rules for the, upcoming
Yeah.
season or whatever, but
Well, yeah, we're gonna see. Yeah, I definitely think we'll see that with this one. I also think we're gonna see a change in the policy when it comes to the photographers
yes,
and that stuff.
and that
So,
too.
like, I mean, it's one of those, and everybody's like, "Well, it's become the no fun league." Well, it's become the no fun league because you have people that break the rules, and suddenly you got to come up with a new rule for
Yeah.
why that is not appropriate. So, it was just I got to tell you, like, I saw that, I was like, "What the heck is this?"
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that was the corner office. Next week, I'm going to dig deeper into unsportsmanlike conduct and also some of the because I hit more on roughing the passer and
Mhm.
the helmet rule the first time, so I'll hit more on unsportsmanlike and all of that. And then after that, I'm planning on doing an instant replay show leading
Oh,
into playoffs and things like that. So
cool.
we have some ideas, and the corner office will continue with the rules discussion,
Hey,
which
there's a
I
lot
think is
of
interesting.
them.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of them. I mean, I was sitting there in the game on Sunday and a few things that happened, and people are losing their minds. And I'm like, well, that's what the rule says, guys. That's how it is. And they're like, no, it's not. I'm like, no, it is. Like, here it is. Here you go. So, all right. Well, we're going to have a little bit of a shorter show today, guys. But as always, we do our one last thought. And I'm going to continue with Nick's little idea last week when he asked us like what we do for Christmas and everything, and asked Delilah, what is your favorite Christmas memory?
When honestly, it's when I used to get together with my family because it was easier when I was younger, and we used to have just huge, like it was somebody's house where you would have a slew of cousins, friends that are also cousins, aunts and uncles that are your aunts and uncles, but also aunts and uncles because they're part of the family,
Mhm.
and just like, and it was beautiful, and I miss that, and I really hold that time dear, which is parents. I understand why probably people walking around with wine and cocktails because you're dealing with like 30 cousins or something. So that's what it felt like in one roof. So kudos to y'all. But I loved it. I love the feeling of it, the feeling of family, of just being together, eating, playing games, watching TV, watching movies, watching games, and then, switching back and forth, playing with my cousins, running around, my brothers and sisters, and just that's my favorite memory are my childhood Christmases where it was just all of us really just being in that moment of just all of us together. And I mean, I know things change, so that's why I hold that dear because it's a lot more challenging to do that with people living in different parts of the country and even city. And so that's those are my favorite memories. Are actually like my childhood Christmases. It was just all of us.
All right. I have similar memories too, like my family getting together, but the story, I don't actually remember this, but it's a pretty funny story that my mom tells me. So when I was growing up, my dad was in the Air Force and we were up in Kinchlow Air Force Base, which is way up in the UP of Michigan, near Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan is where it's at. And we lived there. And if you lived up in that area, like you can get 12-foot drifts very easily snow is everywhere, but as a kid, I was fascinated by snow. Loved it. I wanted to play in it. I'd roll around in it, throw it, snowballs, playing with the dog, all that stuff. Loved it. And of course, I did look like the little kid Ralphie from A Christmas Story with, I mean, you're in the UP and you're 2 years old. Your mom is going to deck you up with everything. So, because of that, my parents decided that, so they had a sliding glass door. And they would put a broom handle in it because I would open the door and go out whenever I wanted to. Well, they forgot to put the handle in the door one year around Christmas, and we had 10-foot drifts outside. And my mom all of a sudden is like, why is it cold in here? She turns around. I'm standing at the door. I have the sliding glass door open. No shoes, no coat, nothing. And I was about ready to go whoop right in. So, needless to say, after that, it became you need to check that door all the time, like all the time. It's about as good as the water wings story too. So again, jumped in the deep end. As you can tell, I was a pretty adventurous kid, and if I wanted to do something, I was doing something, and it was pretty white snow, but it was like 2 feet over my head, like, but I was going in because I wanted to make snow angels. My mom was like, "Oh." So, but yeah, that's one of my favorite stories from Christmas and stuff, and just always like you said, getting together with your family. And my dad was in the FAA growing up when I was growing up, so he moved a lot. We weren't around family a lot. So when I was younger, it was just us, and everybody would like ship the gifts in for us to take. So when I got a little older, around 7 or 8, we moved to Central Illinois. And that's when I really got to go to Christmases with my cousins and things like that, and actually spend time with family, both sides of the family, with the grandmothers, and just all the things you would do, like sitting around the TV watching A Sound of Music, because that was the only thing on after Lawrence Welk was played. So, yes, I am dating myself with that reference. So, all right. Well, this is the time you remember the Christmas stories and family get-togethers and all of that. And it was wonderful hanging out with you, and I was glad we could have a girls' night, let's say.
It was nice.
It was nice. And all right, well, guys, that's the round table today. Sorry it's a little short, but the boys were unable to make it because of work reasons. So next week we will be back with a bang, and Nick will be here to be your ringleader with the rest of us that make up part of the circus. All right. So have a good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.